All right, welcome everyone. James Mulroney is taping us for MHTV and we are being live streamed. So I will call us to order at 7:01. All right, first up is commendations. Does anybody have any commendations this evening? Emily?
So tonight I'd like to commend Mandy Murphy, the village school principal, on her response and action towards the incidents of hate that have happened over the last few weeks at the village school. And I also want to commend Dr. Bucky for his response as well. It's great that we have our administration and leaders doing something about what has happened. But most importantly, I want to commend the students who stood up to the hate and alerted adults about what happened, because doing that takes a lot of courage and bravery. And it's so important that our students feel comfortable that they can do that and have people to go talk to. So thank you to them. And I just want to say, as a community, we have to come together and stand up against all this hatred that's happening. And I think it's important that every day that everyone, students, families, teachers, faculty, admin, anyone who's in our buildings, remind our students and each other that Marblehead is not a place for hate, and we need to do better, and we can do better. So yes.
Thank you, Emily. Sarah, did I see you put your hand up?
Yes. Thank you very much, Emily, for what you said. I think it's safe to say we all agree with everything you said. I wanted to commend Elizabeth Peterson. She is a woman in our community who came out on, I believe it was Monday night, to help by shoveling the sidewalks and street around Village. She doesn't even have a student there. I later found out. She just drove by that morning and saw there was a problem and wanted to be part of the solution, which I thought was really impressive. There were, she was joined by other people out there, but I specifically wanted to commend her because just that idea that I'm going to help because I see a problem, even though it doesn't directly benefit me, is just what we need to see more of in our community, I think. And I just wanted to honor that.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other commendations?
Believe Todd will look good with this family.
Okay. Todd, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'd like to commend my staff for the job that they did through this storm. They began Saturday morning at 3 a.m., finished up around midnight Saturday. They were back Sunday morning, 8 a.m., worked another 8 to 10 hours. They were out 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning through the week, helping to clean up wherever we've seen or been asked, or, they've just jumped right out there. Especially one of my staff, Ramon Rijos. He was stationed at the Veterans Middle School throughout that entire blizzard to keep those sidewalks open in case the town needed it as a shelter. And he spent 16 hours doing that, along with everybody plowing and keeping it open. And I also really, really want to thank Richard Kelleher. He made sure that all my staff had coffee and plenty of food to help them through. So they're very tired, and I couldn't be more proud of them. They had a long, long week, and it'll continue tomorrow.
Todd, thanks for that. I think your team has done a phenomenal job, and it's nice to hear the teamwork too with, Richard coming out and supporting your team. So thank you for letting us know about that as well.
Yes.
Absolutely, Todd. I completely agree. And thank you for coming and saying that this evening. And I'll take it a little bit of a step further and thank the town for their efforts, in particularly on the backside of all of this and removing the snow, because it's not easy, as many of us know, within the pickup and drop off situations. And so, I know that they're still working, even like on the backside of the high school where everybody drops and picks up over by the post office. There were signs posted for snow removal today. So I really appreciate the efforts at continuing to keep our students safe. Anybody else? John?
So in my former district, the superintendent was a retired superintendent out of New Hampshire. And in our first leadership meeting together, he said, "How do you call snow days?" And everyone kind of laughed because on the island, there really aren't many snow days. And he was very hyper focused. And when I got the superintendency in Marblehead, he said, "You're going to have to make your first snow day call." And so membership has its privileges. If you're on the school committee meeting tonight, you're hearing it firsthand that we will have a snow day tomorrow. The robocall and announcement will go out at 7:15. But this is one of these storms where it's going to be too close to call. And so we're collaborating with Swampscott and Nahant and Beverly, Manchester, Essex, Essex Tech to make the call this evening. So we will indeed have a snow day tomorrow.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
All right, well, everybody heard it here first.
I actually just yelled to my husband as he went to go tell the children. I was like, "Don't tell them, don't tell them."
All right, I think that wraps up commendations for this evening. Yasin, I will kick it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. I know everybody at the high school was hoping for a snow day, so it's good news. Speaking of snow days, a couple days ago when we had the big snowstorm, our Interact Club, which is the Rotary Club at Marblehead High School, they also helped shovel during the snowstorms, and maybe they'll help again this tomorrow. I wanted to give congratulations to Tim Clay on his acceptance and participation in the all-national mixed choir. It's a huge accomplishment. Tim and three other students were also accepted to the all-state chorus, and they will perform at Symphony Hall in March. So a super cool experience. On January 26th, grade 10 had Essex Tech After Dark presentations to offer them a dual enrollment choice with Essex Tech and Marblehead High School. On January 27th, we had the grade 8 open house. That was a great program. We collected food for the Marblehead Food Pantry through January 28th, and we also collected winter coats, hats, and gloves for MIAA, which is the sports league in Massachusetts. They donated that. Currently, the Marblehead Community Outreach Club at MHS is collecting food and supplies for LifeBridge. Team Harmony gave presentations at Village on February 2nd to all grades on discrimination and treating people well, as you guys mentioned. The freshmen are holding their Valentine's Day fundraiser with Stowaway Sweets until February 8th. There is a Chipotle fundraiser for the National Honor Society next Wednesday. There was a math meet today. January 25th, swimming had their senior night. Juniors had college prep seminars this week and last week, and junior parent night is currently ongoing, I believe, at MHS. Track had a meet January 26th. Girls and boys basketball won a couple days ago, and indoor track is getting ready for the NECs, which are I believe, the playoffs. So congrats to them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yasin. Sarah, did you have something?
Two things. Yes, and while reviewing our minutes, one of the minutes we reviewed was when you were first introduced to us back, I believe it was in June. And I just want to take the opportunity to tell you, you've been doing a really great job.
Thank you.
You had some pretty big shoes to fill, and you've done a good job. And I just wanted to let you know that popped into my head when we were reviewing those. And then I also just, I was remiss in my commendations. I heard a lot of positive feedback about the 8th grade night and how the energy was just so wonderful. And Dan just was so welcoming, and parents and children left there all feeling really great. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yasin, now I always have to ask, did Principal Bauer do a cartwheel for the eighth graders? Or did they have to be at the high school for that?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I'll have to ask my brother.
Did not witness a cartwheel.
Thank you, that's for really special occasions.
He loves the cartwheel.
He does. He does them so well. Thank you, Yasin.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Next up is public comment. So if anyone would like to make public comment, please use the raise hand function. I will ask that people keep their public comment to 3 minutes or less in length, as stipulated in our policy. This will allow us to hear from anyone who wants to comment. We'll also keep us moving forward with our meeting. And I would ask that Emily help keep track of the time on public comment. All right, I have Nicole Cohen. Can you state your address for the record as well, Nicole? You're not, you're muted, Nicole.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I'm sorry that you're having public comment now and we're not exactly sure what we should be commenting on. A couple of concerns. One with the team harmony presentation and the DEI. My understanding is that presentation that was presented to the kids spoke about something very specifically gender related. I'm just wondering why Team Harmony and others are not addressing anti-Semitism. I'm also curious for the Team Harmony presentation, does the school have to have send home a need informed consent from parents if they're talking about certain topics? So that's a concern. Obviously, the other concern is masking. So I don't know if I'm at 3 minutes. So that's where I'm at. I can let others speak also. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Catherine Martin.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Catherine Martin, 29 West Shore Drive. And actually, I wanted to speak a little bit about the budget process. Can you hear me? Oh, sorry about that. I want to speak a little bit about the budget process and how it's going. So I attended the budget subcommittee meeting on December 21st, where a number was presented. And the superintendent presented it to the FinCom members of what we needed for an exemplary education. And then at that time stated that there wouldn't be a lot of movement in that number. And so, sorry, but I think someone else is unmuting, but I'll continue. So, so my question is, as we went into the last liaison meeting, we had lost quite a bit of money in the ask. And I understand that some of the technology ask got rolled into other numbers and some things were moved to the capital ask. And I understand that, looking at leases rather than buying things, I don't have an issue with that, but we were so substantially over kind of the level fund. We're looking at override type numbers. So I'm wondering why we're removing the curriculum coaches, the fine arts coaches, the professional development for STEAM, various other professional development. If we're going for the override, and I haven't heard anyone say it out loud, but we're so far over zero, I have to assume that we're at least tracking or at least starting the conversation. Sorry about that. The school department just called me to tell me we have no school. So I guess I kind of want an explanation as to, are we looking at the override? If we are, why are we cutting? Why aren't we keeping the number whole? Because, it doesn't make sense to go in for 2 million and change. It makes sense to go in for the number you were looking for before. And we're all looking for that exemplary education that we talked about on December 21st. And I remember Sarah Gold saying it last year, we all want it all. Is it okay to want it all? And I want it all. I think a lot of parents in this district want it all. We're ready to be your foot soldiers to get the word out. But I think we have to make sure that our number encompasses everything. We haven't had an override in 17 years. This is not something that happens every other year. This is not an easy sell in this town. Parents are ready to mobilize. So I guess I'm just looking for an explanation, and I'm looking for that number to be put back where it was, because we need these curriculum coaches. We need that fine arts teacher. We need STEAM. We need professional development. We need all of these things that were on that list. And I'm happy to support it. My family's happy to support it. And we've been waiting for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. Luba Grenadier.
Yes, hi. Luba Grenadier, 27 Ware Lane. I just wanted to, somebody mentioned the masks, and I'm hoping certainly this is on the agenda, because as a parent, I know we all have different opinions, but I'm very much concerned, and just reading a lot of findings about the masks. I'm also a professor at Endicott, and the masking mandate came down in Beverly as of yesterday, and I saw the students who were thrilled to take off the masks, a completely different attitude towards education and participation in the classroom. That's where I teach. And I'm just very much concerned about all the findings about social experience that the children are having from young age to high schoolers. And I certainly hope you will consider, I've written some letters, I have received some feedback from some of you. I was hoping to receive an acknowledgement from others, which I haven't, unfortunately. And so please consider this. And I don't want to take all the time, and I'm happy to share more of what I know, what I've researched, and I've done quite a bit in terms of the harm that the masks are doing, as opposed to having a positive effect on what's happening. And excuse me, the lack of necessity at this point with all the COVID findings and what is happening, in terms of needing the masks and actual efficacy of the masks. So I certainly, hope you will consider. And also my son, who is a high school senior, also wanted to share his thoughts on that. So here he is.
Hi, yeah, my name is Isaac. I didn't want to take too much time. I wanted to share because I think that students aren't really being asked how they feel about masks. And I'm a senior, and I know that it's not super important for me at this point, but I can see that around me, the masks are having a big effect on social and mental health. It's very difficult to interact with people. And I think that especially kids in the early grades are unable to develop social skills as they should in school, which I think is really bad because we can't really see each other's faces, the majority of the face. And I think it also creates a lot of anxiety about just being in school wearing a mask and people constantly judging you if you're wearing it correctly or whatever. And just being in the classroom where teachers are asking you to pull up your mask, and it's just totally a distraction. And obviously it's very difficult to breathe and concentrate while wearing it. So I just hope that people talk to students and ask them how they feel also.
Thank you, Luba, and thank you, Isaac.
I just want to quickly add of what Isaac, I forgot to share, and he shared with me that, and I've seen it, that during lunchtime and outside of school, kids are freely interacting. And so the whole idea of, being covered a certain part of the time and then not another, I'm just not sure how it's working anymore. But thank you so much for giving us the time to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily D.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. I'm so impressed whenever students speak. So thank you to the senior that just shared with everyone tonight. So impressive. And really, it's just a PSA on my part rather than a comment, just to encourage parents to attend the coffee and conversation with Superintendent Bucky. I was able to go last week, and Dr. Bucky and Sarah Gold were in attendance. And it is so much incredibly more satisfying to speak in person to somebody's face and eyeballs and get feedback than these public comments. So for any parents that are listening and participating in public comment tonight, I highly encourage that if you have something to share, we're really lucky that Dr. Bucky and a member of the school committee is willing to show up and listen to us. It's way better than this forum, and we just really appreciate the time that you're making to do that, and we hope it continues. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. Good day.
Hi there, Kim Day, 18 Liberty Road. I didn't hear Emily, and I apologize because I dialed in late to this meeting, but if she didn't mention the crossing guards, I just wanted to shout out to them because it's crazy the circumstances that they put their bodies in when we have storms like we did this week. And I just want them to know that they're really appreciated by a lot of parents in this community and the students as well. So thank them for all that they do. I also wanted to echo what Katie had to say. I really think that it's important for you for the school committee and Dr. Bucky and everybody in central admin to really consider the budget this year and take a hard look and think about, how long it's taken us to get to a place where we are comfortable with our budget. And, one of the things that was really eye-opening to me was attending the meetings where the principals presented their building level budgets. That was such a valuable meeting to attend because there's so much that you learn from hearing them explain and the effort and the diligence that went into the budgets that they presented to the school committee during those meetings. And it's a lot different to hear that background and that ask in that context versus, seeing it as a line item on a spreadsheet. And these principals have all been working in these buildings for years and in this district for years. And when the ask was made, I really feel like they took the time to consider exactly what they need to have an exemplary school for our students. So I think that I echo what Katie said. There's support in the community. We are ready to hit the ground if you decide to go for the override. As much as I wish that Marblehead was the town that we could go back and ask, every year when needs come up, I hope we get to that place at some point, quite frankly, because that seems to be a better way to go. But we haven't had an override in 17 years, as Katie said. And I just don't want us to go in with half an ask or not what we need right now. So anyway, just consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. All right. That is all that I have for people. Really, can you please knock it off? Thank you. Kim, did you had your hand back up?
No, sorry, I was trying to put it down.
All right, no worries.
Sarah, do you have the capacity to, now that we've moved away from public comment, to mute people who aren't part of the meeting?
Everyone, let me see if I can do that. Yes.
We should be unmuted now.
Okay.
Oh, Sarah can't unmute.
Yeah, Sarah, I'm going to make you a co-host. And David, I will do.
Get dangerous.
This is why I prefer not to put these types of controls on, because it's a nuisance on the other side of it. Right, and Emily, that should allow everybody to unmute themselves. All right, that moves us along to minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes in the Dropbox. Did anybody have any additions to make for them? Sarah?
617 just had a few typos. If Lisa just looks those over and corrects those, that will be fine. And then when I reread it, I kind of lost track of this request. There was a request in there for itemized invoices. If we can just review that and then get those out to us. And then 8.3, which was our retreat, there under the light department section, can we just have it reflect in there that during that discussion we had as a committee, I think, assigned the members of the facility subcommittee to be the liaisons to the light department, and that just wasn't in the minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sarah Gold,
Yeah.
Sarah Fox. Sarah, I'm looking at the packet tonight. Michelle does attach all the individual invoices. So is there something different?
No, this was a specific request for itemized invoices that we hadn't gotten prior. So when things were paid through that first round of CARES Act money that flowed through the town, if it was paid by the town portion, we didn't get an itemized invoice. We only get the itemized invoices that come from our schedule of bills.
So that would be something that Michelle would be getting us? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me write that down. And that was at the 7-8 meeting, you said?
6/17.
Great. All right. Anybody else have any additions or anything? All right, I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes from 6/17/2021, 7/8/2021, and 8/3/2021.
So moved.
Sarah moved. Second. Megan second. All right, roll call vote. Sarah Gold, yes. David Harris.
Yes.
Sarah Fox.
Yes.
Megan Taylor. Yes. And Emily Barron.
Yes.
All right, thanks everyone. Passes 5-0. All right, that brings us to Principal Bauer, talking to us about approval for the Deca overnight field trip. We have Principal Bauer with us. Principal Bauer, there you are. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Oh, great. Thank you. That's a great feature to lock me out. I appreciate that. I'll stop with that. So I was just updating the sign to say no school tomorrow. So anyway, yes, thank you for having us on. I don't know if Janice Scalaban is on. Janice Scalaban is our business teacher who runs our Deca program here at the high school. And our request, and we're happy to bring this request to you, is for the overnight field trip for the Deca state competition that will take place in Boston. This will take place Thursday, March 10th through Saturday, March 12th. We have 29 students who've qualified. We had the districts at Endicott, and so proud of our students in Scalaban, and 29 qualify. So they would be leaving the high school in the afternoon of March 10th. So what that means is we only miss one day of school. But again, as it being an overnight field trip, we need to ask permission. I guess I'm glad to bring this to you because it's a sign of moving back to normalcy for our students. And as Ms. Scalaban has communicated with the students, we fall under whatever Boston guidelines are for COVID in terms of vaccination status and such. So there's been fundraising that has been done. There's been some leftovers from the previous year as we were not able to do things in person. So the cost was brought down to $345. And as you know, this program has been supported through a grant from the Friends. So again, we're so happy with the support, and we're just asking for permission for us to attend the overnight Deca state championships in Boston starting March 10th to March 12th. And I don't know if Ms. Scalaban has anything to add. She is on.
Great. I allowed you to unmute yourself, Ms. Scalaban. So if you'd like to say anything, feel free.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the students are very excited because they came in first through fifth and placed in the district competition. So they're able to compete at the state level. So everybody is hoping to go. They have to have 2 shots, 2 vaccinations, and be masked.
Well, thank you so much. So I will, before we ask questions, I'll just ask for the motion and then we can kind of discuss it. So can I get a motion to approve the MHS overnight for the Deca competition from March 10th through March 12th?
So moved.
Megan moves. Sarah, you want a second?
Sure, second.
Great. All right, any questions or comments? Sarah?
Where this is the overnight, is that if there was a student for whatever reason that wanted to participate but didn't want to do it as an overnight, more as like a day commuter, if you will, is that still an option, or is the overnight a requirement?
That is an option this year. And I'm trying to figure out how many sophomores are actually going to the semi. So we'll have to get permission for parents to bring them back and forth. But yes, it is an option if somebody wants to have their parent bring them back and forth to compete and to attend all the activities.
Okay, and then as far as them pairing up and sharing rooms, like, are there any precautions for that if precautions were needed? Sorry. As far as like COVID, like, you know, like if we first like came into another spike or some such thing and they're needed, are they doubling up, I guess is what I'm asking, or do students have an option?
I can
not
help
to?
answer that question. So one of the things that we do with all of our, we really haven't taken many trips, but we did have a music trip, and anything else we run through Deanna in the health office before we do anything. And she's consulted with myself and Janice. So if there's anything locally that would have to be done, we would follow those guidelines. And Janice, Ms. Scalaban, has been on top of communicating with the families and the students, so they know all those pieces. And also too, what we do is too, for safety, there are chaperones that are stationed throughout, as well as Ms. Scalaban and herself, and chaperones will take care of that piece in terms of monitoring. And we at the high school have a place where the bags are stowed. We check bags before students leave for safety, as we always do. So we'll follow those guidelines.
Perfect. No, I just know Boston has much stricter rules. I'd hate for these kids to work so hard and then all of a sudden, for whatever, there not be a match up to the stricter rules that are in place, you know, in staying in Boston and lodging and eating and things like that.
They are using box lunches this year or for all the meals instead of having buffets like they usually do. But as far as the rooms go, the rooms are all triples or quads. And, you know, even those are pretty expensive, but that's it because that's how the rooms are.
All right, thank you. Anybody else with any questions?
I'm just glad we have the opportunity to do this. It sounds, Dan, like you and Ms. Scalaban have done a great job organizing and figuring out the logistics, working with the families, and I, you know, just hope it's a great weekend for them. Congratulations to them for making it this far.
Yeah,
I'm happy to move forward with this.
Absolutely. It's very exciting for our students, both that, again, we're moving forward and that there are so many of them that have placed so highly in this competition. And I know, you know, we often, I think, represent quite well in this Deca competition. And I know that this is a class now for credit, which is a great thing for everybody. So all kinds of exciting things. All right, so we'll take the vote. Sarah Gold, yes. David Harris,
Yes.
Sarah Fox,
Yes.
Megan Taylor,
Yes.
and Emily Barron.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. That passes 5-0.
Thank you
everyone.
so much. We appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you very much.
Yes, good luck.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Bucky, that moves us on to the superintendent's report. I will hand it over to you.
And I will hand it over to the Director of Technology, Stephen Kwiatek, who is moving us further and further into the 21st century with an update to our registration process. So Stephen, take it away.
Stephen, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep.
I been working on our registration process over the last 2 months. We've started a online registration using our Aspen student information system. Moving forward, parents will be able to log on to our site, create an account, apply for a new registration for their students. Any existing parents can log in with their account and create a registration for a new student coming in. This is going to solve a lot of our issues with some of our paper process that we've had over the years. Transferring information from one system into another, it's going to have a single source, which will move the process along a lot faster for our parents as well as our staff. We expect this process to really be up and running in the next couple of weeks. So I'll be excited to have this open for our next registration round coming up.
Wonderful. And everybody hopefully saw the memo that Stephen added into our Dropbox tonight. Thank you for joining us, Stephen. Anybody for him? Sarah?
So does this get rid of some of the glitches that were in with the other system where the pre-K didn't roll over to kindergarten enrollment and families had to re-enroll from being a pre-K family to a K family? And also, like, another glitch I know that was a big one was when you had a family account, you still had to upload all those documents, like your deed to prove you lived here for each child.
Part of the process is going to be the registration verification. If you are already a registered parent, you've probably already gone through that process. So I think a lot of that will be resolved as part of this. Any parents who have left the district and are returning will have to go through the process of verification, just because we need to verify. But other than that, it should resolve a lot of issues. I wasn't aware of the issue for rollovers from preschool into first grade, any of that. I'll check on that. That if they're already in our Aspen system, it shouldn't be too much of an issue for a rollover. But now that I'm aware of it, I'll make sure that
No, that will be huge because that made those kindergarten numbers hard to adjust because so many families who are in our pre-K program assumed they were already enrolled. So when we were doing our enrollment projections, it kind of makes it hard because people didn't realize until placements happened. And an educator will say, oh no, that I know that family was here and they're still staying. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
And Stephen, just to sort of come alongside that, is this going to help with some of the issues that we had with kids matriculating from private schools into the district, and sort of particularly at that high school jump where they sort of missed out on an email address and some of the different things that were going on and sort of kind of missing information, missing schedules, those types of things?
So it's definitely a better process for us to collect all the information, and it will automatically be moved right into our Aspen system because it's all going to be entered into the one single system. So yes, going forward, all the information we're collecting automatically gets moved over. When the child has been activated in the Aspen system as being a registered student, all of the account access will open up. It really will resolve a lot of our issues.
Wonderful. It's great. Thank you so much, Stephen. As always, you're finding problems and fixing them.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have one question. I don't know if it's for Stephen or John, but just, yes, there are 90-something people on this call, but how do we get this information out to families, but especially new and incoming families? How do they know about this?
So we're definitely going to have a rollout process once it's ready. Again, we're a couple weeks away from it. We'll be sending out, the Blackboard Connect calls to the families so that they understand what's going on. We'll be promoting it on our website as well.
Great. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. And this doesn't require us to vote or anything. This is just an update. So we appreciate it.
Thank you,
Stephen.
So now we move to the budget. And budget update, this will be similar to what I gave to the joint group. Can everyone see that on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just remind everyone that I think Bill McCullough used the word iterative to talk about the budget process. And we began the budget process by asking directors and principals, what do you need to effectively run your building or program in order to provide an exemplary education? From experience last year, I didn't want them to leave anything off the table. So they made presentations knowing that there would be things in the request that we would further need to vet based on school committee feedback or the budget subcommittee feedback, meetings with the joint FinCom budget subcommittee. And so what you see, nothing has been cut, nothing has been eliminated, but there are opportunities to look at the requests and are there alternative ways to fund things? Or are there things that operationally we need more time to vet and to figure out? And so what I've given you this evening is the categories of the budget requests. And so safety, and if there are any notes, if there's an update to the budget requests there. We also have the smart panels. That was an original ask of $665,000 to purchase outright. One question that was presented through the process is there an option to lease these? So Michelle and Stephen looked into it. There is an opportunity to lease it. That would be $235 a year over the next 3 years. And not for nothing, but leasing technology makes good sense in the rate at which technology changes and our ability to upgrade at the end of that lease makes good sense. So that was an adjustment that you see on the original ask through that process. In terms of personnel, the MHS 0.8 visual and performing arts, that didn't go away. That can be funded through the existing budget, through existing staff and changes in enrollment. And we wouldn't have known that in December during the presentation, but that was an ask that Dan made. It is still in the request, but we don't need additional funding to make that happen. The same thing through the Endicott Fellows, that can be funded through a grant. The curriculum directors, that is something that through our planning for success, the development of the curriculum, as you've heard Nan say many times, we are woefully under aligned in our curriculum. Some places it's absent. So teachers being part of that work, developing the curriculum is the initial step. Curriculum directors, which I have heard since being here, is missing in our budget. So I wanted Dan to include that. As we go through the process, we also have the stipend working group, and they're looking at all the stipends we pay. We currently have team leaders across the district. Is there an opportunity to look, do we need team leaders and curriculum directors? And so in conversations with Nan and with Dan, we're not eliminating those, but operationally, it hasn't been fleshed out yet. And so we will put them forward as part of the FY24. And will it be 2? Will it be 1 for each content area? Will they be 7 to 12? This was something that I talked about with the joint budget subgroup, is that curriculum work in districts takes on a lot of forms. And where we are right now, we're not ready to operationalize curriculum directors. And so Dan's on board with that conversation, Nan's on board with that conversation. I get historically in Marblehead that if you haven't gone for an override, that you may look at this, that you have to do everything in this 1 year. I would suggest that I think in working with town and working with the school committee, that we can put this forward next year when it's further developed. You'll see the DEI position that was added, that was not discussed in the December meeting. So things in the iterative budget process change. The stipend increase is that working group that MEA and administration has, and looking at our coaching stipends and looking at our academic stipends, co-curriculars, student council advisor, musical director. That's big because those have not been reviewed. In working with Michelle, we're putting this $65,000 placeholder in that we can make some movement through that working group in increasing stipends for the aforementioned team leaders, if we maintain team leaders, or if we're able to look, will that funding go to curriculum directors? And will that be K-12? Will that be 7-12? A lot of conversations still to be had there. Student services, the curriculum piece of this, we're able to do the extended year. That's not going away. We're just able to fund it through a grant. Central office contracted services, we're reducing this by $25,000 because it's reflected in building level request or department request. So we're able to fund what we need to do with the reduced amount at the central office ask. The K-6 PD for STEAM, part of acquiring the carts will come with some built-in PD. And again, building level requests for increase in professional development should account for the reduction here. So you see there's no change in the tuition for pre-K, out of district tuition. There is conversation at the joint budget about student services and out of district tuition and transportation. So we will continue to look at that. Here is kind of the overview in each of the 6 priority areas. And again, in each of those priority areas that I just went over, those were in priority order as reviewed by the administrative team. And then to get to the 2941144, there are additional things in our operating costs that get us to our ask and to our overall budget. So I'm happy to take questions on budget.
Can I just clarify on the lease thing?
Yep.
Because that's probably one of our biggest changes here. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but originally we had that ask, that 600,000 ask as a one-time cost. So what leasing it does is it spreads that payment or that expense over a number of years, but also putting it into the recurring costs. Then we've got that amount to fund ongoing maintenance, replacement, et cetera. So that's kind of baked in then to the operating budget.
Thanks for clarifying that, because that was actually a question that I wrote down too, because that honestly, like some of the conversations that we had back in the budget presentations that was talked about of kind of, is it wise to replace them all at once? Because then they're going to need to be replaced all at once again, and those larger asks that could become problematic in the future. So we can't tell the future. So I think that's really that's good to know. Did you want to? I kind of cut you off.
No, that's fine. I mean, I've been through this a number of times with John, so I think maybe open it up to questions for.
Sarah?
I will say I have some various serious concerns about eliminating the curriculum coordinators. As we went through the process of planning for success, I know the groups I talked to, it was every single group said, since we got rid of curriculum director or curriculum coach or curriculum coordinators, there's been, it has negatively impacted us, and this is why. And they gave information. And when we all got together as that collective unit, it was a strong theme that came out that people were missing those curriculum coordinators. That a lot of what they did was above and beyond what the teacher leader position does. That they helped with evaluations. That there was a high impact of not that only on our staff, but also on outcomes for our students. So I would plead that we keep that in there and that we make those people that we hire into those positions part of designing whatever curriculum that we're going to design and choose, because that's so important that those people are choosing what they're then going to implement later on. I think kind of picking something and then bringing them in after, to me, feels somewhat disjointed. So I would just ask that we look at that again. Another piece of that being, I know a lot of towns do go for overrides every year. Marblehead isn't one of those. The idea that we may come back next year and be another 210, that we're going into an override saying, but we know we're going to need at least another 210 next year, on top of anything else that pops in. That's going to be a little bit harder, I think, for voters to realize, okay, we already know there's more coming down the pike. It doesn't seem like the best plan for that. I know that at the SAC that I sat on when budget was on the committee, there were some additional items identified there, just, as we get our communities together the way we do for an SAC. And really that's, the whole point of these is to get that extra community feedback. So how have we implemented the information that's come back from those different SACs, as was one of my questions. And then ultimately, I think, I'm happy to hear that we're going to be going this year for an override. And I think it's been long overdue, but I personally think I would like to have that whole district meeting again that we had back when this was presented, so we could ask some more questions of our administrators and really, understand these numbers in more so for the community to really understand them, because now that the community knows we're doing this, I think it will help us to have that level of clarity. I mean, it was so powerful to hear from all of our administrators and staff of why they needed this. I know it was powerful to myself, and I think I heard that from you guys as well. That I think for the community to know this is coming their way, and to hear that same discussion, and to give ourselves more time to kind of ask some clarification and dig into these numbers a little more. So I would ask that we be able to book that and put that online.
Is that something that we can have the administrators come and just make sure? I know many of them are probably here this evening, but I want them to be prepared to sort of be on that. Can we, at either the next meeting, I know you won't be here, so maybe that's not our best meeting to choose, but maybe that first meeting in March to be able to do that?
We can certainly do anything, but I think that that's why you hire a superintendent, to be the voice of the administrative team. And we meet weekly and we go over budget and we review these asks. If the curriculum directors is the elephant in the room, so to speak, I know Nan and Dan are prepared to speak to that this evening.
Yep.
I know that, I just know that to be able to get the town behind us, I think it would be really helpful to kind of go through what we went through once more. And I see no negative, and I only see a positive with bringing the community further along. I know when we sold the school, we did multiple forums of questions, and this is why we need it, not just one. So I think it would be helpful for the way we do business here to kind of give the community that picture of why we need this.
David?
Yeah, so I don't even really know where to start. Sarah, I appreciate your comments. There was a lot of things there that you brought in the last 5 minutes, but I'll just start by saying, in the 7 years I've been on the committee, I'm proud to say that there have never been staff reductions across our district. And if you look at the various communities around us and what's happened, we are talking about this $2.9 million number, but we're also, I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we have $1.4 million in steps and lane changes that we have collectively bargained and faithfully bargained with our teachers and reached agreements on. And, we're very fortunate as a district, and we're far from a sinking ship where we have been able to maintain the staffing throughout. And I think even during the pandemic, when there were additional funds and monies to help with keeping people on staff that may not necessarily have been at school every day, providing meals to people's and students that needed meals. And so I think, we're a very, very fortunate district. And so, and then there were earlier comments that it was like $2 million in change. And I don't like to hear $2 million talked about as change. It's $2,941,000. We're almost at $3 million of an ask, in addition to the 1.4 million. And, I don't take that lightly. And I was a member of the finance committee in 2005 when that last override came through the town. And I don't disagree with the sentiment and comments of people that maybe that's not the right approach to take. Maybe it hasn't been the right approach that it's been 17 years, but it's the past. It's what has happened. And so I want to thank Dr. Bucky and this committee and all of his staff, as Sarah mentioned, and as other people have said. It was very powerful to hear the principals and their staff make their presentations. And we've been out ahead of this as the finance committee tried to accelerate the schedule as best they could. And, get into this process a little bit earlier. So I think we, starting before Christmas, we came with the first, as you said, Dr. Bucky, iterative process of outlining, what is needed for an exemplary education. Unfortunately, there's been some changes in town. And so, but I think we're still on schedule. We'll delay some of our presentations to the finance committee for a couple more weeks, maybe into early March, but I think that will be fine. And I think it's prudent that we take those steps and allow John McGinn to reacquaint himself with where we're at as a town. And I also think Steve did an excellent job presenting the state of the town. Additionally, I think there are some things there, Sarah, you're right. Curriculum directors, if Dan and Nan do want to speak to those things, but we do have some one-time asks in our budget. And so I would fully expect that those would be one-time asks. And, next year when we came forward, that might free up some money that could be used for future asks and wouldn't require an override. So I think in the previous slide I saw we're somewhere at about $240,000 of one time. So that would be unused monies against the levy that certainly could be spread across the town. But if the schools did have an ask or a new ask next year, we might be able to come forward with that. I think it's also, I just want to talk about the economy. I mean, we're in a challenging time right now where we are experiencing inflation. Costs are going up. Utility costs will be going up. We've heard about, costs across the board. And we also saw during the presentation that there were some revenues that had suffered a little bit in town. So I think next year will also be another year where the finance director in the town will need to evaluate our revenues. Hopefully excise tax will come back if things stay strong. Other areas like that where we might be able to get revenue. I'm hopeful that the state budget might not be a 2.5% increase in Chapter 70 funding when, we're experiencing the inflation that we are right now. And my last comment is, well, at least for this period of time, I want to thank Michelle Cresta because I think Michelle said it at a previous meeting we were at, but part of our role is what we're doing, what we've been doing. We're presenting a budget to the town that will provide an exemplary education. What we don't do is tell the town how to fund it. So now that John has been here a week, and as we heard Steve talk about that, there's a lot of different ways, whether we increase our revenue projections, whether we look at different forecasts, whether we look at different ways to use free cash. Yes, we more than likely would end up with an override or could end up with an override at this position. But I think we're doing our job to present what our ask is. And then the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and the Finance Director will, decide the best means to fund it. And, one of the other examples is, historically, the town has always funded things like fire trucks through, debt exclusion overrides, whereas other towns might look to, use free cash at one point in time to purchase that fire truck or fund it through monies, but that's not really our role. So it'll be interesting to see as we get this number closer to what our ask is and how the town will look at that number. And when we meet with the Finance Committee, how the Finance Committee will view the ask of the school committee and the school department. So I think that it's to be determined at least as to what direction that will go. And I'm hopeful that, with John's experience as having been finance director and town administrator before he retired, that, we'll get some further clarity in the next 3 or 4 weeks and in the middle of February. So I'll stop there.
Did you have any questions or comments?
Yeah. So I think what Sarah is saying and what some of the public is saying is that we want to ask for what is exemplary, right? And that is important. And we're lucky to have a community that is dedicated to education. But I think when this paper, the tracking sheet, was put into the public, it was shocking to see that some of these big things were taken off. And I can say that I was, and I contacted you and was very taken aback. But I think once you've gone through it and explained where everything went and like how, I think it helps. But I think not as a way to be disrespectful, but if Dan does want to speak to the curriculum directors, just so that the public can hear why right now it doesn't work for today, but hopefully it'll work for tomorrow. And yes, we are in this new way of thinking that we are going to fund our schools to exemplary standards all the time. Like, I think we just need to get our public on board because it is a large number and make sure everyone knows all the information. And I think that's the best way we can go about presenting this budget.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
think I will hop right on that, because that has been something that has been going through my head a lot. Is that, yeah, it's been, I think David said 17 years. And that's just not how education runs anymore. And so, a few budget cycles ago, when things were not in great shape, I said I knew we needed money, but I couldn't tell you what we needed and why. And so I needed to be able to do that. And we've worked really, really hard over the last few years to build an administration and task them with telling us what this district needs and why, and utilizing the talent that's already there and really putting it forward so that we can explain everything. And we can explain all of this. And for me, the fact that we're taking the curriculum directors and putting them on next year is an example of why all of the rest of this is so important, because we can explain it. We will continue to explain it. And next year we will be back, newsflash already, for the curriculum directors, as long as we can explain it. And that's how educational systems that are really high achieving and that Marblehead puts itself out there, and I think that's how these districts are funded, and that's how they go. And so I think, there's been a lot of being tasked as an agent of change. And I think that's where we're at. We cannot go another 17 years, we can't go another 10 years without some kinds of asks. And we have people in place who want to stay. We have the planning for success that is directing that for the next 5 years. And we have a committee that's committed to doing this as well, and plenty of people in the public who agree. And we saw that even within a crisis situation, that they turned out and they funded a school because we could explain it. And this, to me, is exactly that. And so I'm hopeful that, like David said, at this point in time, we aren't tasked with knowing exactly how this is going to be funded, but that this is our ask. And again, I'm sure things are going to change a little bit. I have a question again about the communications person. I'm going to keep beating that drum. But I think, that's what's been going through my head for quite some time right now. And I need to kind of get that out, that when we can be above board and transparent, and when we know what we're talking about, I think the community backs us. And I hope that they continue to do, the community and the town backs us, and I hope that they continue to do that. That being said, I do have a couple of questions. One about communications. Any further thoughts on the need for that, where that sort of fits? Do we need someone full-time?
I mean, tonight's a prime example of that. If we had a communications person to communicate out the snow day stuff once that call is made, and to make sure, we're fortunate to have people that assist with that, once they see that the school has made, they push it out on other social media channels. Our principals are on Twitter, and so I'm sure that was tweeted out this evening. But yes, there's a case to be made, but I want to make sure that it is thoughtfully vetted and I want to make sure that the things that are student facing right now are immediately attended to in this ask. And I want the community to see that we're deliberate and thoughtful in this process. And I think I also said in December, this isn't a Christmas wish list. This is not a holiday wish list for that we're just going to ask for everything over the last 17 years. This has been a bare bones budget community. We are starting to put some muscle on the bone or fat on the bone at this point because it has been bare bones and we can't do it all in 1 year. And I do want to be able to make the case to the community that this has been a thoughtful, deliberate, iterative process. And I'm happy to have Nan and Dan speak to these, but we wouldn't cut anything. We wouldn't remove anything. We wouldn't remove an ask if we thought we needed it immediately for next year. And, Nan has worked at the Department of Ed. She's worked in urban districts. She's seen various directors of curriculum and how districts approach this. We're just not at the place to operationalize that. And so to stand before the community and say, we're going to add this $200,000 ask, not sure what we're going to do with it yet. I don't think is a place that we want to be, but I'm very happy to bring the administrative team to talk to the committee at any time, because we do meet weekly and we vet these things and we have collaborative conversations around these topics.
And I think for me in the town sort of needing to pause a little bit, I think, as Sarah had said, like, we want to be able to be out in front of this and we want to be communicating this to the community. And so I do get a little anxious at sort of when our brakes are pumped, because we've really had our act together in an amazing way this year. So I think conversations like this for me are really helpful because it gets it out. And I really hope that we continue to have these types of conversations as our meetings move forward, so that we really are continuing to say, like, yeah, hey, we tweaked this, we added this, we are, up to this. So that we keep everybody informed, so that no one is surprised when we get to our hearing and we're somewhere in, give or take, this 2.9 space. Megan?
Do you have further questions? Sorry.
I do have a couple, and maybe this is the time to bring Nan and Dan in, because I know you and I talked a little bit about this the other day, but so the question that I had is, with the curriculum directors and the teachers creating the curriculum and sort of putting that out there as how they want it, is that kind of how that's usually done? Because in my head, curriculum directors might be able to help with that or do that in a top-down fashion. So that was sort of a question that I think might be worthwhile to answer for the public as well.
Sure. I'll let Nan.
All right. Nan, you should be able to unmute.
Okay, great. So Sarah, the answer to that is Marblehead does not even have a scope and sequence at this point. So, and the answers aren't going to be built by somebody new to the district. It has to be the internal people who are currently in those classrooms collaboratively developing that scope and sequence. And that work has started. Every principal is using their internal staff and team to build scope and sequence, and then we're going to put it together and it will be a comprehensive pre-K through 12 scope and sequence. We'll then use that guide to look at curriculum. And once we get to that point, will be when we're ready to talk about purchases of new curriculum, supplementing curriculum, and bringing on curriculum coaches. But I think John, summarized our conversation so well in that more people at this point, it's not going to translate into what it sounds like they could do. We're just not in that place. And we are talking about what it takes to create an exemplary education. But I want to remind everybody, Marblehead is an extremely proficient district, kids are receiving an exemplary education at this time. John and I are in classrooms all the time. It's phenomenal. We're at the high school with Dan, we're at the middle school, everywhere. The curriculum coaches are there to support teachers with the materials that they use, and we just don't have those yet. We really need to gather that thoughtfully and make those investments in partnership with the coaches.
If I could just interject, that is an important piece of this budget for me, is getting the supplies, materials, equipment, resources, technology into teachers' hands, so that in the science classrooms and labs at the high school and middle school, they have what they need. And so you see those requests reflected in this budget. Attending to the staff that is here right now, getting them what they need, as opposed to just adding more staff.
Sarah?
So did I just hear you correctly that because I have heard you say that when you came here, you didn't find a scope and sequence at the elementary level, but are you saying we don't have a scope and sequence currently at our high school either?
Correct.
How is that an exemplary, but you said we're providing an exemplary education, but you're saying we have no scope and sequence.
Well, the scope and sequence is the map. So teachers right now are diligently looking at the state frameworks and aligning their curriculum to the standards that are assigned by the state in the framework. What we need to do is pace that out over the course of a year, the 180 days, and map it out for teachers. So it's a very thoughtful approach of when instruction is happening.
Isn't that exactly what a curriculum coach would do or coordinator would do?
Yes, but ideally the curriculum coaches would be working with staff and with the curriculum, and we don't have the curriculum right now. So we
at our
need
high
to,
school?
well, we have, but it's not unified. So to bring somebody in and kind of have these different approaches to curriculum happening, for example, at the middle school, at the elementary school, we're just working now to align curriculum resources. So we have teachers meeting the standards using different materials. So a curriculum coach will come in and work with teachers on implementing the materials, but we don't have the materials yet. So we're going to.
No, I understand that at the elementary level, but this ask was only for high school. This was Dan's, this was only an ask at the high school.
Right.
And if we don't have what they need to work with already at the high school, we have a much bigger problem. Like if we don't have scope and sequence and curriculum chosen at our high school yet, which I believe we do, like that is what this ask was for. It was to work with the high school, which already has that. I mean, the other grades are down the line, but this was for the high school.
Right. But I think Dan, I'll let Dan address that. But I think what we're finding through our plan for success work is that some of those materials need to be revised and updated. But I'll let Dan chime in and if he has more thoughts on that.
Sorry about that. Okay. I mean, through the whole process, the scope and sequence, curriculum and such, it's just a matter of getting things organized and lined up. We've been working on this and looking to finalize and get it moving. Made a lot of strides, but certainly to, the broader picture as well, across where this should go. So certainly some work that needs to be done on this. We wanted to get this moving in the conversation we've had. We've had conversations on this. So it's something that, will be coming and want to get this happening, but want to be very thoughtful on how this is done because there's certainly a lot of internal pieces that need to fit with curriculum directors too, making sure it's the right fit, making sure that it matches up. And also too, that transitional piece, although for the high school, there is always that outlook to the transitional coming from 8 to 9 and all that other things. A lot of pieces have to be put together. So we'll make sure we do this right.
And I'm very happy that there's thought in doing this right and everything. My concern is that I don't know what changed in a month that we needed them a month ago and we don't now. Like that's where my loss is. Cause I've seen this movie before where we start to do, well, what can we get by with? And if you need these and needed them a month ago for exemplary, I want to give you everything you need. Like, I don't mind asking for anything you need. If you really don't need them, then you don't need them. But you gave a very moving argument.
Well, I'm not going to back down from that piece. Like, yes, but I've been here 6 years. I feel very good about the exemplary piece that we've done here at the high school. We always are looking to improve. So we've made it this far working with this, and I know, before me as well. Again, I think it all making sure that everything aligns and works into it. And certainly knowing that, we'll get this done. I just want to make sure it aligns well, and we are able to be very thoughtful and mindful in this piece too, because I don't want to recreate anything as well. The discussions have been very positive here at the high school about that, because it is a change, but ultimately, you're changing, it could be a change in structure and how things work. And I would welcome that too, for sure. But again, being very mindful with this, because there's still some internal work that needs to be done. And I just want to get it right. Again, been here 6 years, and I think we've done well. Very happy and very proud of our teachers and our families and students and the support. So
Dan, I've never heard a negative word about you or
well, but again, I know, and I wasn't prepared to really come on and go through, and I'm passionate about this piece, but I'm also wise enough to know the big picture has to work well. And certainly seeing how things are moving forward, and seeing how the planning for success has worked, and getting to a position where, we're able to have these conversations and talk about this piece. This is evolving. So, I mean, that's all I can really offer.
So it is this, you can make it another year without this?
Yes, we'll make it work.
You don't need it. You can make it another year.
We'll make it work. We've made it work. We're already working with our English department on some work. We haven't done our program of studies. I've been working with Mike Giardi in the math department. There are lots of things, and Dave with science, and Bob Colfer with social studies and world languages. We're doing the work, but I want to make sure we get this right, because I don't want to come back and make tweaks and adjustments too, because there is a broader picture. It's easy for me in my world here at the high school, but understanding, the piece across the board that is really, really critical. So, again, that's about all I can offer on that piece. And I feel, we're going to make it work.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
My
Sarah,
concern is we always
Sarah,
make it work.
I also want to add that part of the planning for success team, and Dan can validate this, is there were a lot of teachers voicing that they want a role in informing curriculum and the direction that we go. And that this has been something that the district has tried to engage teachers in, and then they put their heart and soul into developing these curriculum maps, and then no one ever follows through. So we really want to honor what teachers are telling us, and that is that they want a voice in this process, and to take their good work forward, to bring it forward to us for consideration and to be embedded into these maps. And then once we have all of that work, it makes sense to bring somebody else in to support teachers in delivery.
I was at planning for success too, so I heard all the same things.
Yeah.
I just, our goal is to stop asking our administrators to make it work. And I worry we're still doing that partially.
I can say something. Yeah. I really appreciate this conversation, and especially getting some more feedback. And Nan and Dan, thanks for clarifying on the curriculum directors and adding some more description around that. I appreciate that. From my standpoint, I feel like getting to this point has been kind of a long road. But I honestly feel like we have done what we set out to do, right? So we cleaned up the budget. We brought in staff who were knowledgeable and experienced, and that we chose for that reason. We've gone through the planning for success process and come up with a 5-year plan. And then we've had our experienced staff here now for 18 months, looking at what we need to support that planning for success. And they're in there every single day. Our building leaders, our administrators, our teachers, they're in there every single day. They know what we need and what we've, said, tell us. And this is what they've come up with. And I do think this process, as John and Bill have continued to say, is iterative. And they've done, in my opinion, the right thing in saying, here's our ask, now let's look at it. Here's our individual ask, but now let's look at it as a group and from a district perspective. And what does that look like? And can we change our thinking a little bit, modify, vet, and go through that process that we would expect them to go through? And this is where we are. And so for me, like I said, we've got the expertise and the experience who have got us to this point. And I think they're going through the right process. And I just have to advocate for them. Like, that's what I think our role is. This is what they're saying they need. And so we need to advocate. We need to help get the community informed. So I absolutely agree with your comments, Emily, but we have to advocate for what they need and personally not second guess what they're saying. Can we add to the conversation? Absolutely. And I think that's what we're doing here. But we also have to have a little bit of faith as well.
Can I ask one more quick question? I think it's quick. The stipend adjustments. You mentioned that you and Michelle have placed the like a $65,000 mark in there. I know that work is ongoing. Will that work be completed before our budget vote? Or is that are we kind of gonna work with a little bit of a moving target?
I think you're going to work with a moving target.
Okay.
We met last week, we met this week. We're going to not meet next week, but the Thursday before we leave for the February vacation with some different scenarios, similar to curriculum, how people's stipend positions is all over the map. They have incremental raises year by year. They have tiers, which we currently have. And so each person on that working group is going out looking at different scenarios to bring back on how we might structure things in terms of our stipend positions.
Okay, that's good to know. So if that number fluctuates, that's why.
Yep.
Sarah. One thing I'd ask you also to look at and consider, I ask for it every year, we'll see if this is the year, is a grant writer. They pay for themselves. Very quickly, you vet it's working or it's not, it's paid for itself and brought in additional revenue or it hasn't. It's very data driven, it's very easily trackable. And especially in education, where education is ever evolving, there's always new trends that are coming out. There's always new things we can and should be doing for professional development or curriculum or all these things. I would argue that a grant writer would be a great thing in our district. We can even ask them to have, focuses on certain areas if that's what we're looking for. But for things like STEAM, sustainability, DEI, like all these things, we're leaving money on the table that we could, through a grant writer, be getting paid for essentially. So I would put a plug in again for getting a grant writer.
All right. Yep. I think that's it on this piece.
Okay, moving on, the other thing is face coverings update. I am pleased to announce this evening that DESE has updated their guidance on January 10th that went from us needing to police mask wearing if we took advantage of their waiver system to back to the original language, which was highly recommend. So the Board of Health has said that we operate as an entity governed by DESE and that we are free to make decisions for the public schools that are not under the umbrella of the Marblehead mask mandate. So this evening, my recommendation will be that the high school, the middle school, and the village school take advantage of the 80% mask waiver and go mask optional on Monday, February 7th. Now, I want to clarify a few things. Mask optional does not mean mask prohibited. So we will still strongly encourage mask wearing. Our leaders will model mask wearing. There will be students and staff who will elect to continue, and principals are already working on messaging to make sure that there's no asking, well, why are you still wearing a mask? Matt Fox gave a great example today, like a blue shirt. You wouldn't ask somebody, why are you wearing a blue shirt? We want to have that same around masks. But for individuals, we are well over the 80%. At the high school, I think we're at over 90%. The middle school, we're over 90%. The village school, we've been granted waivers. As of 5 o'clock this afternoon, the village school waiver went through. Brown and Glover are not there yet. Brown is at 64.5 and Glover is at 66.5. So as soon as those, I have the waivers sitting on my desk to submit. But for the high school, the middle school, and the village school, we will go to mask optional on Monday, February 7th. I will cover this in my weekly update. I know MEA is on board. I have met with them. We have their support. They will be pushing out messaging to their list this evening. I know the high school, middle school, and village are working on that. But my recommendation to the committee is that we go mask optional at those three buildings.
All right. And our policy has stated that for a while we voted on those changes to allow, once the waiver went through for those buildings, that Dr. Bucky could come to us and let us know when that makes sense operationally. So if anybody wants to, take a vote on this, we can. I don't think we need to because the policy is already set and we directed Dr. Bucky to handle this operationally a few months ago. A couple months ago. Seems like a long time ago. David's got his hand up, so I'll call on him first.
Thank you, Dr. Bucky. And I just want to thank the administrators. I think it's really awesome that we're going to have them be modeling wearing masks. We want people to feel comfortable that if it is mask optional, and I think that's a really unique approach. I hadn't thought about that, but I can see it now. When Dan does his meet and greet at the school, like he always does and has done for the last 6 years, and he's out there with a mask, he's going to be telling students that, hey, if you want to wear a mask, it's okay. And I think that's the way we all feel. So I really appreciate that part of it. And any other administrators or teachers that take that approach to help support those students that feel uncomfortable. So I just wanted to make that one comment on your recommendation and how that will go forward. I really appreciate that.
Megan? I agree. Thank you, Dr. Bucky, and to the administrators for getting us to this point and for continuing to model and message. I think that's an important piece of this because it is relaxing the mandate, right? But still recommending masking if appropriate. I kind of see this as a first step to starting to roll back restrictions. I do think we have to acknowledge that there are still 2 of our school buildings that are still going to have the mandate. And, that will be an issue for some families where they can have 1 or more students who are mask optional or not mandated, and then maybe a student or multiple students that are and have, that could potentially be a challenging conversation for those families. So like I said, I'd like to see this as a first step, and I'd like to really see us to think about how we get those elementary schools to the same point. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that DESE's mandate expires on February 28th. So obviously there's an option for them to extend that, but I think that will be kind of our leading into that, our next check-in point. unfortunately, there is a mandate, and as regardless of how we might feel about that mandate, there are repercussions for us not adhering to it. So we've got to kind of work around the obstacles that are in our way there. But I do think this is a great first step. I'm happy that we can move forward with high school and vets and village. And I just encourage Dr. Bucky for your new team to do what we need to do to get those elementary schools to the same point. John?
I totally forgot in the announcement that and this may change people's, but I will recommend that returning from February vacation, that we do a week of masking, because we have seen in coming back from Thanksgiving, coming back from the holiday vacation, travel, congregate things that happen, that numbers increase. And so I will say that, going into the February vacation, those 3 schools would be mask optional. But for the first week we are back, that we would do masking. I think DESE is steering districts in this direction with the take-home tests. And so the onus is really moving from the schools policing this to families managing that you have a test. If you test positive, you stay home for 5 days, and then you're required to wear a mask for 5 days. And this is where we have to count on our families to support in-person education and doing the right thing, in that if you have a positive test, you're going to call your school nurse with that information. She's going to give you the dates when your student returns. That's why I appreciate the fact that we're still going to model mask wearing, because there will be a necessity for some students and faculty over the course that as they're coming out of isolation, but the schools aren't going to police this anymore. And I think that's the offering, right? You're sighing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Only you can hear that, John. I take your point about February vacation. I do just want us to encourage us not to be doing this flip-flop, right? Like, I think that's hard for students and for families to manage and wrap their heads around. And
That's what I'm announcing tonight.
Right,
So that it isn't 2 weeks and then during the February vacation, surprise, we're going back. But I do think it is prudent on the district to follow that course.
Can I just add one little comment to the February vacation? Can we provide masks that week? So, because people are going to forget.
Absolutely.
So
Yes,
maybe
we have plenty of masks.
So that's not an issue.
That is not an issue.
Sarah, I know you've got your hand up.
I think the 2 weeks off and then the 1 week, and then coming back from February, I think we just created a gigantic nightmare for our staff and our teachers, because that week after February, when the kids have been the two weeks off, I think that's going to be very, very hard, I think, for them. And then I want to make sure too that we're putting out in the community what the mechanism. I know when we were in the lunchroom, any family that had specific medical needs or anything that couldn't do that, because I think we all forget that we, in our spirit to be, part of DEI is also people with medical needs and people with disabilities, that there are people that simply just can't at this point be in that situation, and we have a legal obligation to meet their educational needs. So what is the path for meeting those children's educational needs moving forward who cannot be in that environment? And how are we going to do that? And what is the path that families will need to do to make that documentation? I just think where we have a snow day tomorrow and then all of a sudden Monday morning we don't have that, it makes it a little bit hard for families that do have that requirement. And we have that need to get that met. I don't know how you would do that. Are our principals on site tomorrow? I mean, what is a family's mechanism that has this, that has a parent going through chemo or a sibling going through that, or an organ transplant or immune compromised, that we would have a legal obligation to meet. Also, a lot of our students suffer from anxiety from the masking. and that will help those. But there are a lot of students, I'm sure Sarah knows this, that will have an increase in anxiety when the masks suddenly come off. They went home from school today, their first time back, suddenly come off without kind of the education piece ahead of time, and having our social emotional staff kind of prep them ahead of time. So this plan seems to be lacking a plan, if you will, to making all of our students ready on Monday. I mean, it helps one demographic, but in some ways inflicts great harm on another demographic right away. And what is our plan for mitigating that while still meeting our legal obligations? And what is the avenue for parents to contact you to do this?
I guess I'm very confused by that. It's not mask, like you can still wear a mask if you need to wear a mask. And
no, but for some kids being in, like there is like I said, the anxiety piece of all of a sudden being in, like some of our students don't go eat in the lunchroom because being in large groups of unmasked people still is creating anxiety. It may be a small group, but it's a very real group. I don't know if you deal with that at Tower, but I know that it's a very real thing in some of our schools. I know, there are families that have medical conditions and those children eat separately because again, they can't be in large groups, even with just them with their mask on with other. So while it's a small group, I'm fully aware it's a small group. It speaks to the fact that we owe all of our students to have a plan. And my question is, what is the plan to accommodate everyone's need and how would we convey that before we open school on Monday?
Yeah, I can speak to that because as we were planning this with principals today and having conversations, that we're not changing operationally how the schools are, like math has lunch periods, and that isn't impacted by being mask optional. If there are particular situations with families and individuals, they can reach out to the director of student services, to the building principal, and talk about what this change will mean for their student. But it is not going to impact how we're educating students if we need to increase distancing for some, or again, masking it's not mask prohibitive. And so we'll work with any individual student and their family to accommodate the needs as documented.
Yeah, I think, I absolutely take what Sarah's saying, that there's going to be an increase in anxiety for some. I think that number, as I've been watching, kind of paying attention to this over the last few weeks, I think that number is getting fewer and fewer. And I think, that speaks to why you're asking that the building leaders continue to model masking, that, we do want this, again, it works both ways. We didn't want to do this a while back because we didn't want to have to police it and point out students who did not have the approval of their parents that needed to wear masks. And so, but I also think that this has been a while in coming. And I will go so far as to say it shouldn't be a surprise to most. And I think for myself, I don't have a problem with the masks, never have. But I'm also really excited to see us take these steps forward because to me, yes, I absolutely think that there's some, there's definitely the communication pieces and facial expressions and everything with the masks. Allowing them to be taken off is a huge step towards normalcy as well. And I think for most of us, that's what we need right now. And that is for myself, as I think about this and my own excitement about this is that this is a step towards normalcy, towards the endemic phase of this. I've been barking at you since August about endemic and off ramps and how we do this. So this is really, I'm excited. I'm excited that Village sort of was able to we were able to get this through with Village as well. And I think our town has done a good job in getting its kids vaccinated. And, you know, I hope that we continue to do that, and so that we can continue to move forward. And I think that this, for me, this 80% off ramp has always been a really important piece of like, that's a really conservative number when we think about 70% being herd immunity and everything. And I think with how many people have had it recently and that 80% aspect to it, that there are a lot of other layers of mitigation other than our masks as well. And masks like these are at least 70% effective one way. And it's not as though we're turning off our MERV 13 filters and our HEPA filters and buttoning up our windows. You know, the windows are still going to be cracked. The air filtration is a huge aspect of all of this. And when we're talking about an aerosolized virus, that's exactly the long-term solution to it within this endemic piece as we head in that direction. And I absolutely agree with you, John, that the at-home testing aspect of this, like it is 100% moving from a top-down oversight, institutionalized management to home management, people needing to stay home when they are sick. That's another huge aspect to this, that if you are symptomatic, that you stay home, even if it's symptomatic with a stomach flu, or, you know, there's just so much, like we need to learn things from this experience. And if we learn one thing, it's hopeful that, you know, stay home when you're not feeling well. I struggle with that lesson as much as anybody else. So, but it's really important, particularly as we move forward. And I think, you know, I'm always bolstered by the fact that we haven't, you know, Massachusetts has really had a lot of masking, but many other states haven't. And yes, those states operate differently and have different virus rates and everything, but, you know, we haven't seen massive implosions of systems this year when they're not masked. And so that is encouraging to me, you know, and one of the things that I think about within this is that I would never want to make a decision that would put kids and teachers in harm's way. And so I've needed to feel confident in this piece. And I do right now, you know, I do, so.
So can I just speak to that? I don't think this will come as a surprise to anyone, done my due diligence, and I've reached out to districts who have done this. Hopkinton is meeting tonight, their school committee, to go back to mask optional. They have been masked, they were mask optional, and then coming back from the holidays when it was just, everything was so askew. And so Cohasset, both the districts who have taken the off-ramp have said the fear of what would happen was more than the reality of what happened when they did this. And I just want to recognize that coming back to school in the fall for our families that have been fully remote, there was a lot of trepidation in that. And I just want to reiterate, we will work with families to make sure that people feel safe and are accommodated and their needs attended to, as we, you know, for some, this will be easier than others. I have great confidence in our building leaders to attend to those needs.
I said this the other day, you know, about a year ago, we were sitting in a very similar feeling as we started to look and make plans to push out of hybrid and to push into full days of school.
Yep.
And that was really scary as well. And there was a lot of moving parts to it that needed to be figured out. And it worked because there was a great plan and there was good thought behind it. And we prioritized the additional mechanisms of mitigation. And you know, I feel confident that we're doing the same thing here. None of these decisions are being taken lightly. I will also reframe the week after February vacation, because I understand your concerns completely. And I've gone back and forth in my own head a little bit about sort of on-off stuff. If there could be social emotional benefits seen from that because of the need to mask when you come back from quarantine. And if we've got people traveling and we know we're going to hit a bit of a hurdle or bump after February vacation, or the likelihood of it is high, that having masks on everybody is going to help kids sort of transition back in without being like, oh, I'm the only one wearing a mask now, or, barely anybody's wearing a mask now, as kids want to look at, the only people that aren't. And that may make them feel a little bit more comfortable sort of coming back into school if they have had the virus. I'm usually good for a positive reframe anyways.
Just with the February thing, I think I am for having masks that week after, because we have seen the rise in cases, and yes, it's going to be annoying and kids are going to be mad or frustrated by it. But if we provide the mask for those kids who like, oh, I forgot my mask, and just have them there and make it as easy as we can for them, I think it's going to be okay. It's like just, and then for April vacation, once we see how this goes, we probably won't do it, right? Because if we're fine and everything, like, I think it's kind of like a compromise. Like, we're doing this huge thing, let's make everyone feel good about it, and then just keep it going. That's how I see it.
April vacation, I think, is a different animal too. It's April, not February. Yep.
Yeah. So I don't think anyone's really going to be annoyed, at least by Tuesday. And then it's going to be a celebration again on Monday.
All fair points.
I mean, you can go anywhere.
I really appreciate this conversation. It's been a positive conversation. I almost don't want to ask it, but I have to. So, and I know we've had other parents ask the same question. So, we're following the DESE mandate. And again, whether you agree or disagree, there's a mandate. But can we just talk about why it's in our best interest to adhere to the mandates? Can we just get that out?
Why is it in our best interest to follow the state mandate? Let me jump on that.
We've legitimately had that question. So
yeah, and I think it is legitimate. I mean, I posed it at points of like, okay, what happens if we don't follow the mandate?
Exactly. So
a superintendent may or may not have spoken with the department today to ask that very question. And the contact at the department was clear that in-person learning in the state of Massachusetts right now is mandated to be masked. They have provided a waiver system for districts to go mask optional. If you are operating a school that does not meet the waiver criteria, but are not enforcing the in-person mask mandate, they will not count those as days of instruction. And so if someone were to, using an old phrase, drop a dime and call the department and say the Brown school, they're unmasked and they haven't met the waiver, or the Glover school is unmasked and they haven't met the waiver, the department would say the days that you were in person without mask were not in-person instruction days to be counted toward your 180, and you will therefore need to make those up. And so I'm not, as superintendent, I don't want to look at a family and say Glover students will not get a April vacation because we did 1 day, 2 days, 3 days outside of the mask mandate.
Thank you for that explanation. Sarah, I think you've been trying to say something.
Yeah. So I just want to be clear that my questions before are I want the people who need this information to have this information. I'm not saying that I'm just saying is a demographic that will need this information, and I wanted to make sure they had it. And then in that vein, could you clarify, so are we, when kids come back for that second 5 days, that we won't be policing that, we won't say, okay, you're still under that, you're still technically supposed to be masked because you're in your second day of your period. I don't know what they're calling it now, contagious period or whatever it is. So that's the honor system, I'm assuming, because the whole point of this is we didn't want to police.
That is absolutely correct, Sarah, and that is a very legitimate concern, because we ask families not to send students to school when they're sick, if they have a fever, if they have a rash, if they have strep throat. And we want to make sure with COVID that if they've been out in isolation for 5 days, that they're reinforcing with students that, and again, working with school nurses, but classroom teachers are not going to be provided a list. And nurses will work with families. And that's where I say the family piece of this is critical. And what gets impacted is our ability to maintain in-person instruction. So if people ignore and we start to see widespread as a result, that could first force us back to masking, or worse, shut us down.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Like, that's my biggest fear. That's, like, that my highest priority is in-person learning, as far as I see it. And that will always be my biggest anxiety, is that something could tip us out of that.
Well, there's no other option. We're in-person learning where your kids aren't learning. Like, there's no other, there's no gray. We're in person or we're in school till July, or lose April break or whatever it is. There is no other option. Before gone pool testing as well in any of our schools?
I'm sorry, would you repeat the question, sir?
Have we stopped pool testing in any of our schools, or will we continue to do pool testing?
We are continuing to do pool testing at Glover and Brown. My guess is we will continue at Village for a couple weeks. I think the law of diminishing returns at the middle school and the high school in terms of vaccinated people should not participate in pool testing, and people that have had COVID within the last 90 days should not participate in pool testing. And so, I was vaccinated, boosted, and I unfortunately got COVID. Pool testing, I think the department is saying we're going to do the at-home test, provide these to staff and families to monitor this outside of schools.
Okay, so at least at Vets in the high school and soon to be Village, we will rip the Band-Aid off for masks and pool testing. So we're kind of adopting a don't ask, don't tell policy at the same time that we're ripping it just seems like a lot at once.
Well, I think at Village it's staying put for now.
Village, yeah.
For a couple weeks, you said?
Until the at-home testing program gets up, as we know, the shipment was supposed to be distributed tomorrow when we don't have school. And so I can see us continuing with pool testing for next week and the week after until the at-home testing program gets up and stabilized.
And the high school did test this week. I can say that personally. I know that pool testing did go off this past week.
Right. So just on that piece, just so I'm clear too, like I said, with the making the masks not mandatory at those 3 buildings, for me, this is like the first step as we start to roll back some of these restrictions in our schools. And the pool testing, especially at the high school, wasn't all that well utilized to begin with. And now we've also had to take a number of those students out of the pool because they've had COVID or for whatever reason. So it's not actually an effective mechanism at this point. And in exchange, we're providing those at-home tests, which is giving you the test, please use it. And if you're positive, then absolutely tell us, right? So we're just kind of putting in place a different mechanism for that testing and taking it off of our school nurses to manage and to enforce, right? But we still are having those mitigation processes in place. We're just a different mitigation process, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. And our high school students aren't stupid either. One of the reasons that we have such poor attendance for it is that kids have figured out that if they're not symptomatic and they test positive in a pool, then they get to stay home. And if they're not symptomatic, they don't want to stay home. Right. So, again, they're not stupid. They've figured out the end arounds and utilize them, and that feeds or contributes to the lack of commitment with pool testing at the high school level. And I don't think we've had a lot of positive pools. Just to, what is being tested is not coming back. I think I heard there was 1 positive pool at the high schools. Not this what just happened, but last week.
So could I, where masks are optional, where we've adopted the mask optional program, and pool testing has always been optional. I mean, can we continue to leave that option for people who want to utilize that until the state takes that option away? It's free, it's paid for by the state. They give us CIC. There's no impact financially to our district. You know, we've included the COVID, the nurse Joe is included in our budget specifically to handle this program. So we have that funding. And like I said, it's optional. Any family that doesn't want to partake in it doesn't have to. But for families that do, it's essentially, it's a good litmus test, you know, a PCR each week for those families that want to be part of it. And that gives them information that they need.
I can have further conversation with Joe about that.
I don't disagree with Sarah.
What about sports?
Sports?
Yeah.
I asked that question this afternoon because districts are varying. Some have mask optional, some aren't, that they should go with masks if you're playing a school that has not taken advantage of the waiver, and for spectators and visitors to the school as well, because we're under a town mask mandate, and this applies to staff and students in the context of an 80% vaccination rate, and you can't employ that for a gymnasium full of spectators, that you maintain mask for spectators at events.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I also thought MIAA stipulated masks at events, at any indoor event.
They do.
At this point.
But what about practice? Can they be unmasked at practice there?
Because that is a school event with that 80%, yes.
Yes. What about the, like, Marblehead youth basketball who use the school buildings? No. Okay.
And also when we rent another venue, like we had received as a school committee an email from Salem State that if we didn't adhere to their mask policy, they would essentially sever our contract, unless I read that wrong. So certain sports like hockey will still need. So I think it's very sports specific. And if families have specific questions, they should probably reach out to tomorrow, I guess. I don't know if our staff works on the snow day or how that works, or, you know, if I know some does and some doesn't, I guess is what I'm saying. So if you have questions, I guess, reach out.
There'll be communication coming out from me tomorrow and from building principals as well.
Great.
The other thing on my update was the town report. And so we've gotten all the submissions for that, and that will be compiled, and I will get that to the committee before it goes for publication in the town report. In the Glover School Principal search, we have named the faculty and the parent representatives, and we will have our first meeting of that group next week.
Great. All right. I think we need a executive session.
Yes. There is, the MEA has filed a grievance, and so we need to hear that as the school committee. And so I've reached out to Colby and worked with MEA today. So Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, I think that could be Zoom. I don't think that has to be in person. So, but it does need to be an executive session.
Okay. So I'll to the committee, I'll text and please let me know whether Tuesday or Wednesday works better. I'll put that out after the meeting. All right, fantastic. That was the end of John's. That brings us to our schedules of bills. Those were all in the Dropbox. So can I get a motion to approve the identified schedules of bills totaling $2,333,612.12? Megan moved. Emily second. Any questions on any of those? David?
I don't know if Michelle's with us, and I can certainly follow up with her after, but I was just seeing in the utility bills, water and sewer, gas, electric for Coffin and Evelyn. And I just wanted to make sure that we were trying to minimize the cost of these utilities and that we're doing the bare minimum of what is needed to, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, I guess, keep these facilities from either freezing up or, having other problems, because some of these utility bills, if you just look at the schedule of bills, add up certainly. And just had a couple of questions of like why we also had water usage when we're not in the schools. Not really sure how, the water bills would be like they are. So that was the one question. And then also Valley Communications. I was just wondering if that Valley Communications is related to the new digital sign that's at the front of the high school. And that's the monies that are being reimbursed from the donation.
Shall we take those? Oh, sorry, I need to allow you to unmute. All right, you should be good to go. Sorry.
Okay, great. I do believe the Valley Communications is related to the sign. I would have to go back and look at it. There were a bunch of invoices that I have looked at over the past week, but I do believe that was related. In terms of the utilities, we do have those at minimum levels, but obviously at a level to make sure that our pipes do not freeze. We also have building checks of both the Coffin and Evelyn school every single day. So we have a staff member popping by to make sure that there is nothing, going on there and that everything is safe. But I will certainly look at the water bills. I'll actually ask Todd to look at those and make sure that there doesn't seem to be something going on. I noticed that a lot of our water bills, we're having some type of adjustment. So I think they're actually getting up to actual readings. So that's why you might see a larger bill right now where some of them may have been estimated in the past. So it's probably just a catch up of that, but we'll take a look at that.
All right, thanks, Michelle. And one last question. Who is Direct Energy?
Direct Energy is our gas. So we have a gas supplier and a gas provider. So we have two different bills for the gas.
So it's not all National Grid.
Correct. We use National Grid's lines to get the gas to us, but the actual gas is purchased through Direct Energy.
Interesting. So that's must be an option that is afforded to municipalities and schools outside of National Grid, or?
Yes, and it's actually part of the contract where we lock in our rates. We're part of a collaborative agreement with many other communities across the state. So yeah, we're in a 3-year contract with that I believe is up in about another 1.5 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions? All right, roll call vote. Sarah Gold, yes. David Harris?
Yes.
Sarah Fox?
Yes.
Emily Barron?
Yes.
And Megan Taylor? Yes. All right, passes 5-0. Thank you, everyone. That leads us to our subcommittee and liaison updates. I can pick that up because we had a policy meeting in between the last meeting, correct? We are in the process of finishing up reviewing the I policies. So we hit the last 2 with no changes. And we're going to circle back because over the past, last year as well as this year, we've tabled a few of them to bring in some of our district professionals to just weigh in on some of the technology ones and some of the curriculum ones with NAN. And so we're looking back through that. I went back the other day and printed off all of our old minutes so that I could be sure to pull all of those up, and then we'll bring in the professionals we need and hopefully wrap things up. Anybody else? Yeah.
Me first, sure. Yeah, so this is for Metco. So I read in Millie's update that they're now putting best practices at the bottom of her weekly newsletters. And one of them is from the Bedford School Committee, who is piloting a program to have a METCO representative on their school committee. And I want to put that out there to us as maybe something that we could possibly look into doing. Other schools do it. They're basing theirs off what the Lincoln School Committee has done. I think it would be a great way to get our Boston community involved in what we do in the district, and have a voice and feel like they are represented. So I'm just putting that out there. We don't have to do anything in a second.
One quick question on that. Are they a voting member?
Oh, sorry, it's a non-voting member.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm so glad you brought that up because I saw it too. I think I may have forwarded
I
it
think so,
onto you. I think we should absolutely look at, how we could facilitate that. I think it's been something that's kind of, we floated back and forth, probably not in the recent, the last year and a half of COVID, but definitely before. I think it's a great way to get that group, those families and those students more engaged and, help, also help facilitate information sharing, right? Because I think that is a perspective that we don't hear from enough. I think it's a great idea. I absolutely support it.
We do want to grow the program.
Absolutely.
I know we can get more students in, so as much as we can do to make, I know it's a lottery, but just to make us look like a district that is, people are going to want, not that they don't want to come to, but it's just one more thing that we can highlight.
Mm-hmm. Sarah?
Is that more of a liaison position, or it can't be an elected position because by law you can't run in our town, like you can't run for an elected seat in our town unless you're, so that must be a liaison position, right?
The way I understood it, it's kind of similar to the student representative.
Yeah,
that
it's
we
the
have.
same as that.
Okay.
I think, but it'd probably be more involved, right?
Right,
Because
if they would
stay
come
for the
for-
whole, whole conversation and offer their perspective, but non-voting, right? So.
Yeah. John, did you have something to add to that?
I know the superintendent in Bedford,
Yeah.
Phil Conrad, so I'm happy to reach out to
Great.
him to see how
Yeah.
that's working.
Wonderful. Yeah, how they're doing that.
I had the Brown School SAC. And we, the biggest item on that, like I said, was the budget discussion, and we talked about that, and some feedback came out about how having allied arts for the pre-K community was something that everyone felt would make that community feel more part of the school as a whole, but one of the budget drivers to that would be a 0.5 position person. There's a lot of talk about the WIN block and how that could be more successful if they had access to more tutors. I think right now they said they all get I think a tutor once a week for that. That if they could have tutors more often, they felt that they could really be much that they were enjoying the WIN block, that they were getting used to it and feeling of it, but they felt it could be even more impactful if they had tutors to help them more often, and just discussions around that in general. And that's my update.
I had the high school SAC today, and we started to do a dive into the handbook that Dan had sort of prefaced that at our last meeting. I know this is something that I've talked a bit with Lisa about as well, as she looks at the various handbooks and the concern over policies that are mislabeled, and we've moved our handbooks online, and so being able to provide hot links on those things, and so it's going to be ongoing, but we sort of started in groups to take a dive into it and trying to mark language and mark where things needed to be linked instead of explained, because the current handbook is, I think, like 96 pages. So how do we shorten it and make it more accessible? Talk of putting a table of contents that will hot link straight to that section. So just a lot more user friendly, so that when someone does have a question or an issue, they can know where to access it, know how to find what they need, and utilize the handbook as a resource instead of just sort of this nebulous thing that we pass every year and have no idea what is really going on with it. So that's good work.
I just have a quick thing for CPAC. In the last meeting that we had, I think I mentioned that CPAC had put out a survey to parents. So they have gotten the results back from that. And I don't want to steal their thunder on kind of presenting what those results are, but it kind of spurred me to think that it'd be great to find, have CPAC come and present to us. I haven't talked to them about the details of it, so this is news to them too. But we've talked about it before. We've talked about it here. So I just want to kind of put that little plug in to maybe reach out to them and see what kind of time frame makes sense. Especially in light of having some feedback. Some of it's very specific to CPAC, how do you want to communicate, et cetera. But there's information in there in terms of what are some of the topics that parents are on their mind if they want to learn more information about, which I think would be useful for this committee. I think it was a pretty even split across the various grade levels too, so I think it's representative of our families. So just a little plug in there.
All right. I think that's it. So that leaves us, Sarah?
I thought you were going to say new business.
Yes, that leads us to new business.
This actually, I guess it's a new question that hasn't come up. I didn't read something off my notes before, if you don't mind if I return really quick. Just for clarification, on the pink sheets in the budget book where it goes through all the different staff, some staff is listed twice. I know that I did the math. The number isn't carried twice, so don't worry about that. But all of our counseling staff is listed on both special education and what looks like general education. So if we could just at some point get clarification, whose umbrella does that fall under? Or it's like our guidance counselor isn't actually a term anymore. Our adjustment counselors or school counselors, where do they fall? Do they fall under special education or do they fall under like the building principal's budget? And I don't need that answer tonight, but if just maybe for the next meeting, if we could get that update.
So our next meeting, I should have had this in the other area, but our next meeting is in 2 weeks, obviously right before the break. Dr. Bucky is not going to be here, but we do have others already sort of lined up. Nan is going to come and present, and as well as Principal Bauer. So we absolutely can have a meeting and have plenty to discuss. I just want to make sure that we have a committee, that we have a quorum before Lisa and I get to planning and everything. So I believe that's the 17th is the date.
As of right now, I'm not available. I can change that a little bit right now.
Okay, so everybody else is good? Okay, I also, just for, again, transparency's sake, I want to have a conversation next time around about pulling in person. And I didn't get that on the agenda today, but I do think, for new business, and again, just so that it doesn't come as a shock to anybody, that, we've sort of talked about this on and off as numbers have ebbed and flowed all year. And so I would love to talk about returning to the high school and, returning to full in-person meetings and utilizing the YouTube live stream and everything. And I attended the Board of Health discussion on suicide last week or at the beginning of this week, and MHTV was there, and they actually we're live streaming it as well. So I have not had a chance to reach out to anybody there. So I will do that because I think that just gives us sort of hopefully another option, an additional option on how people can access meetings. Because I think, that's something that we absolutely want to carry forward. So I'll put that on the agenda next time to sort of officially have that conversation and make those choices. So just a preview. I don't have any correspondence, so that leads us to adjournment I will officially adjourn us at 9:14 p.m. And everybody have a safe and snuggly snow day tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.